Roger is sending out an email to a few people that Jill wanted to attend. Okay.
Hello.
Hello. I just sent that to them, Jill. So hopefully they'll get that soon. And Rick Henriksen from the fire department's also going to be joining us. I see Donna's on and Chris Perret. Welcome.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you well.
Great.
Hello. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. Hi, Rick Henriksen. Hi,
Hello.
Jim Reese. And public in attendance. We have a few folks from the public attending.
Okay. Cynthia, are you ready?
I am ready. Miranda, are you ready?
Yeah, we're recording.
Okay.
All
All
right.
right, Roger, I'm ready.
So it's a virtual meeting again, so everybody knows and understands the process we have to do by going through the virtual meeting. And we'll work on the public hearing. We'll make some more comments at that time also. So Cynthia, call the meeting, Planning Commission meeting Wednesday, October 28th to order.
Thank you, Chair.
Roll.
Planning Commission meeting on October 28th, 2020 is called to order at 7:02 p.m. Roll call, Chair Cornell.
Sure.
Vice Chair Williams.
Here.
Commissioner Blakemore.
Here.
Commissioner Giblin.
Here.
Commissioner Glasser.
Here.
Commissioner Herring.
Here.
Commissioner Perret.
Here.
Commissioner Reese.
Present.
And Trustee Taylor, who may or may not be in attendance.
He'll join you for the discussion item.
Gotcha. Awesome. Okay, we have quorum.
Thank you. Everybody's here. Good to thank you for all attending again. First item is the approval of the minutes from September 23rd, 2020. I certainly read them. They look very well done, and I think it's accurate to what happened. Does anybody have any comments or issues with the minutes?
I have one question. In the roll call, it said that Julian Taylor was not present, but yet in the text, it talks about a comment that he made.
I think he split from the meeting before our quasi judicial information, but I can look back and check into that.
Okay, I think we just have to amend the roll call for that, just so that it's accurate.
And Cynthia,
Okay.
that actually joined. We invited him to join after the action item,
Right.
so he did join for discussion.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah, I think so too. He did come on there at the end, it was.
Right. I just wanted to make sure that the
All right.
roll call was accurate.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay.
And just mention that he joined later on, whenever he joined. Yes. very
Yeah.
good. Is there any other comments, corrections for the draft of the minutes? Can I get approval with the change of attendance of the trustee, Julian Taylor? Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Was that Perret and Reese?
Yes, I think so.
Great. Okay, and we're going to do
a roll call?
A roll call vote. So Vice Chair Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Reese,
Yes.
Commissioner Perez,
Yes.
Commissioner Herring.
Abstain, I wasn't there.
Okay. Commissioner Glasser,
Is this on the minutes? Because I didn't attend the last meeting.
I'll mark you as an abstention. Commissioner Giblin,
Yes.
Chair Cornell,
Yes?
and Commissioner Blakemore.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very good. I just wanted to mention, actually, everybody's coming through loud and clear. Are you hearing me okay, Cynthia?
I'm hearing you pretty well. I would say from here on out, being as we're not going to have everyone with a need to speak right now, it would be good if everyone muted their mics unless they have to speak,
Okay.
just to reduce the ambient noise.
Okay, we can do that. So that's what we've done. And also that at this point too, I want to just remind everybody, the best way to do this is to say this is, you know, Commissioner Cornell speaking, whoever speaking, say your name. So there's no, misunderstanding who's speaking.
Yes, that'll help Cynthia too.
So let's just put down mention our names first. You can
Thank you.
use your first name or your last name, that's fine. Except for, I guess, the Karen's got to use their last name also. Okay, so the next item is the public comment. We see that there are some people here online with us. So this is, public comment is for any non-agenda items that you want to address to the Planning Commission, not the public hearings, the two items we have in public hearings, which you'll have a chance to speak then. So is there anybody who wants to speak to non-agenda items? Anybody there? If not, then okay, we'll move on to the action item. It's a public hearing, continuation of the rezone application with co-application for lot line dissolution, public hearing at 3 East Fifth Street for Mary Huggins, trustee for Margaret McMullen Trust. I think we've had we started to see the packet. There's been another snafu, and they're asking for an extension. So Cynthia, why don't you walk us through the process of where we are at this time?
Okie dokie. Sorry about that. So this is for a rezoning application and lot line dissolution. We were awaiting a number of materials from the applicant. So we were looking at resolution with the neighboring property, and they were working on a mutually beneficial solution for them to remedy the encroachment issue from the neighbor. And so we were waiting on information about that. We were waiting on a trail easement. So easement documents for the trail. And then I believe also easement for a driveway that would access the 34 Forest lot that in the proposed minor subdivision would be on the 3 East 5th Street lot. And so when those easement documents and the arrangement with the neighbor is remedied and we have those documents, then you would be able to move forward to make a decision on the rezoning and co-application for lot line dissolution. So the applicant was requesting that one more continuation until November 18th. The November 18th meeting would be an early meeting to accommodate the holiday in November. So if the Planning Commission feels that it's willing to do another continuation, we could continue the public hearing to November 18th, 2020. And that is a continuation to a date certain. That would give us time to notice, any new applications, but this application, we wouldn't have to renotice if it is continued, meaning we don't have to send out the neighbor notifications again. I have been putting up public hearing property notices and noting that it's a continued application, just so people kind of keep that in mind, that it's still up for discussion and the neighbors are aware that it's not decided yet. But other than that, I don't have to republish it in the newspaper and send out new neighbor notifications. So that does save some time and energy on town staff part.
Very good. Is Cynthia, is there anybody from the applicant here to speak tonight?
I did not see that she had joined us as I'm looking through.
No,
Folks
and
here-
Mary had a conflict, so she asked if it would be okay if she skipped, and I told her that would be fine. So there's not any representative on tonight.
Right, thank you, Miranda. Is there anybody from the, it is a public hearing, so does anybody from the public want to speak to this issue? Okay. If not, then I guess can we get a motion to continue the public hearing to November 18th, our next meeting, 20. I think that's all we need to continue the public hearing to that date.
All right, so
So moved.
We got a motion to, can I get a second? Steve made a motion to approve.
Second. Second.
Was that Jim?
Well, Billy said it. I don't know.
I didn't get that. I'm sorry. Who was the motion by?
Steve Williams.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It was seconded by Billy.
It was seconded by Billy, and Vice Chair Williams made the motion.
Seconded by Billy.
that's correct.
Those are both correct.
Oh, okay, Miranda, I'm sorry. Your cell phone was cutting out. Can you say that again?
The motion was made by Steve and it was seconded by Billy Giblin.
Okay, thank you. I got that. Sorry, that was complicated. We're gonna go down the list here as I read the roll call votes. Commissioner Blakemore,
Yes.
Commissioner Giblin,
Yes.
Commissioner Glasser,
Yes.
Commissioner Herring,
Yes.
Commissioner Perret,
Yes.
and Commissioner Reese,
Yes.
Vice Chair Williams,
Yes,
and Chair Cornell.
Yes.
Motion passes to continue the rezoning application and line dissolution application and public hearing for Mary Huggins, trustee on behalf of Margaret A. McMullen Trust.
Oh,
All right.
okay, we'll move on to the next item, 5.2. It's a public hearing, consideration of special review use, SRU, application for a multi-use building by property owner, Wild Bear Nature Center, Zero Peak to Peak. Cynthia, do you want to walk us through the abstract?
Sure.
The theme?
You bet. This is a consideration of a special review use application for a multi-use building for a nature center by Wild Bear Nature Center. They are the property owner. Current address is Zero Peak to Peak Highway. The addressing will occur during the building permitting phase. This is legal description tract 6A, the Highlands Replat A conservation easement. The legal description also includes the recording number, which I'm going to skip. This is for Wild Bear. You've seen Wild Bear. If you've been on the Planning Commission, you've seen them come forward for a few applications. This is the third in the trilogy. They came for a minor subdivision after a land swap. Per the mining subsidence that happened in their former property that was technically in the county, in unincorporated Boulder County. They were swapped a piece of property, roughly plus or minus 4.93 acre tract that's actually in the town of Nutterland for Wild Bear, as they can tap utilities a lot easier and they can utilities in Nutterland. So that tract is off of Indian Peaks Drive. As I said, it's a 4.93 acre tract that they have done a land swap with Boulder County. They came for the minor subdivision to that lot from the larger acreage that is surrounding it. Then they came again for a rezone to rezone that into general commercial, given the types of uses that they do. They are presently located over at 20 Lakeview in the Tebow Shopping Village, and they are in the general commercial zoning district over there and do many uses, although having their own piece of private property would allow them some additional uses. Therefore, is to request special review use approval for the types of uses that in the general commercial district do require a special review use review. That is any private elementary and secondary schools, state licensed group homes, or child care centers. That is an education child care use. Under the commercial use for outdoor sales, eating and drinking, or other outdoor commercial activities or establishments, and outdoor recreation facilities, including but not limited to lighted tennis courts, playfields, and stadiums. That is a public, quasi-public use. So there are other uses that are uses by right, and that's listed in the agenda information memorandum, the AIM. And I won't go over the uses that they can do by right. It is explicit to these uses for education, commercial, and the public, quasi-public outdoor recreational facilities. Jill Dreves is here as the applicant on behalf of Wild Bear Nature Center. She founded the Wild Bear Nature Center, and she can speak to the use, and she has members of her design team, and she has a video presentation that will be coming up to walk you through what they'd be doing on the property. They have a conservation easement from Boulder County on this property, and the conservation easement stipulates on page 6, I believe, of the conservation easement, it stipulates that the uses on the property are confined to an educational environmental education center with passive recreational uses. And they define those explicit uses on page 6 of the conservation easement document. The building itself has a range of use types in building code terms. They have business, assembly, mercantile, and educational occupancies. And there may be specific questions about the building and other things like that. This property is just off of the Indian Peaks Drive and sited pretty conveniently, given that they would be increasing traffic to the Indian Peaks Drive. It's right across the road from the Caribou Room, and this is a year-round nature center that they would be having uses. They have summer kid programs. They have special events. They have families that are visiting the site. I presume they would have busing upon the site and bringing in kids from other places. So there's a lot that would be going on at this site. And as far as town staff review, some of the considerations that came up pertained to traffic and parking, given that it would be tourist destination traffic. There's also child drop-offs, employee parking, and increased traffic for planned events. So we would expect that the Indian Peaks Drive Road would see an uptick in the traffic during the school year when there are in-person classes. The increased traffic in the area, it was discussed by Public Works Manager Chris Pelletier. Also, the Police Marshal Larry Johns and Hendrickson, Rick Hendrickson, about the potential for off-street parking maybe on Indian Peaks Drive. That could be angled diagonal parking. It was a consideration that Chris Pelletier, Public Works, said he would entertain if while interested in surveying the road to be able to see what sort of space there would be on the right of way, to be able to do that, to create more additional town parking. I wanted to draw attention to their narrative. Their narrative does note there's approximately 50 children per day for their summer midweek program, about 8 hours each week over 10 weeks. They have shuttle service from Boulder to Netherlands, so that does cut down on some of the parking. They have a weekend and family program that has about 25,000 people per year, with an anticipation of 25% increase with the new nature center, and that's in their narrative. They have special events that are planned 2 to 4 times a year with peak attendance up to about 300 people. The beloved Enchanted Forest that happens close to Halloween. So there's a lot going on the site, and I imagine that there'd be a lot more that they can do up at that site that they haven't been able to do in the Tebow Shopping Center. That was the main stuff that came through staff consideration. And I think Fire Marshal Rick Henriksen is on, and he can speak to any specific concerns about the fire suppression system and any other considerations therein. The application was noticed. I believe there was one comment from the public, but I haven't gotten through all of my emails since I came back from evacuation vacation. But it did go through all of the public noticing requirements with neighbor notices. There was just one letter that came back from a neighbor. There aren't too many neighbors within 100-foot buffer. And property noticing and the public hearing notice in the newspaper. And I will turn it over to Rick Henriksen to speak about fire department for the proposed nature center at this property location.
Good evening, commissioners and others. It's Rick Henriksen from the fire department. I did review the initial plans they've sent out, take a look at the size of the building, the location, the fire suppression systems they have planned, and all of that meets with code. The only thing that's a little bit off on it is the water supply is slightly below what's indicated on the table in the fire code for requirements for maximum fire flow. But considering that covers a very wide range of buildings with a lot more square footage, we're comfortable with the water supply that's available for that location. We're also comfortable so far with what they've lined out for their fire suppression systems, and we'll get more on that as they go through the process. And once final plans come out, those will have, detailed sprinkler plans, detailed alarm plans, what they plan to do with their, getting water to the site, and that'll all be calculated by their engineers, and then we simply review to make sure that's adequate. As far as the parking situation, the more they can do with parking, the better, because obviously if we can't get there because of parked cars, that's a problem. But what they have lined out so far seems to meet the needs so far.
Thanks, Rick. Just want to circle back on that. The plans do propose, I believe, 29 spaces, and that includes ADA spaces. The parking regulations are set by the special review use. So if you look in the parking table, section 16-202, it notes that the regulations are set by special review use process, and there aren't a whole heck of a lot of guidelines to go off of. One part of the parking code that can be useful to consider is that places of public assembly for preschool / daycare, kindergarten, elementary, intermediate schools have one drop-off space per 10 students off lane, and offices and commercial retail generally require one parking space per 300 square feet. So it's really going to lean on the commissioners and the consider what sort of parking requirements would be needed for a center of this size, given They're not stipulated in the parking code, and there's predominantly administrative uses and public assembly uses in and around the building. So I think that kind of provides a bit of a summary on the property itself and the process and the application before you. Does anyone on the commission have any questions that I hope to answer?
Cynthia, before we go on, can I just interject one thing? I forgot to do it at the beginning of the hearing.
Yes, please. I'm supposed to required, or just courtesy, should ask that Jill, that this is an online hearing, and I was supposed to ask if you were okay with this process. Is Jill there?
Hold on. Absolutely fine with the process. Thank you, Roger.
Okay. And then just before we go to the questions too, then, you know, when I was looking at that on the use, it says, I thought there was one parking space per 400 square feet. So maybe Cynthia should tell us which one we should direct at. Some of the commercials, one parking space per 300, but then it's churches, libraries, preschools, you know, what, and then, you know, in that first box, there's certainly one space per 400 square feet, which would actually be well within the guidelines, I think, at 29, but there's 29 spaces. Can you give us feedback, Cynthia?
Sure. Give me a second here. You have, I mean, there are multiple uses there. So let me to that parking table. Give me a second here. So yes, a library. So a church is 1 per 4 seats. That's a place. Other places of public assembly. A church is 1 per 4 seats. A library is 1 per 400 square feet. You have commercial amusements and things like that. I think of nature as a church. Some people do. Maybe you go with 1 per 4 seats. Maybe you go with more of a library mindset. But they have that, including offices and the public assembly. So they have multiple aspects going on there, as well as drop-offs. Drop-offs necessary. And this is probably a good question for the applicant when she gets to speak is, you know, I would presume it would be a landmark destination that could have school field trips there. So would we be seeing bus loads of kids, and then how would that affect ingress, egress on the property and parking and things like that? So that would probably be a good question when Jill is doing her presentation, but give you a bit of framework for the parking question.
Okay, this is Roger Cornell. So, yes, Cynthia, I probably looked at that whole box in there. I was looking at the one, but yes, it's very specific to libraries. So you're correct. You know, it's a broad sweep, so it doesn't give us really a specific. So let's just move on. The main thing I wanted to interrupt was to make sure that Jill was okay with this online format. So, and
then I would only say, I would only add, Chairman, I would only add that what initial parking requirements may be relevant, and as popularity grows, maybe, you know, it surpasses what was already decided. So I think, you know, that's the part of the crystal ball that you planning commissioners get to look in and have and consider this area. But it's thankfully right off of the Indian Peak, so at least it wouldn't get into the neighborhood and slow the traffic going toward the school and residents there, you know, just getting on and off the highway, but not as much as many other locations in the town.
Okay, that's very good. And I think it might be best then, let's just have Jill Dreves do our description and then we will allow the commissioners to ask questions, then we will take public comment. So Jill, why don't you give us the total rundown? And we certainly, the idea of parking is an issue there. So why don't you just do your entire presentation and we'll take it from there. Thanks, Jill.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I am going to have Donna Flynn start. She's our building committee chair. So she's taking the lead here.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the time tonight. We circle back around to your question about bus parking because we've already anticipated that and we have planned for that. So we can come back to that. I do want to call out that we have 4 members of the building committee on the call. So myself, I'm the head of the building committee. Of course, we have Jill. We also have one of our architects on the call, Ryan Hughes from ARC 11, in case there are specific questions about the building that he can address. And we have Kevin Mueller on the call, who has been a consistent member of our building committee and has also been helping with a lot of the energy design components of it. So since you all approved the land swap, we have been very busy for the last 18 to 20 months, trying to move forward our vision to create a community destination environmental education center and a permanent home for wild bear. We have pursued a very thoughtful and diligent process for this, which has been inclusive of community engagement workshops, strategic planning for the Nature Center, and a design ideation process to build the vision for the Nature Center itself. About a year ago, we selected ARC 11 competitive bid process as our architecture and design partner, and they brought together a robust multidisciplinary team to help us get to where we are today and to the schematic design of the building and the landscape architecture that you have seen in the packet. We're now in the midst of a capital campaign, and our goal is to be able to start construction next year, hopefully by next summer, with a move-in date of October 2022. So we're happy to be here this evening to address any questions or concerns you have about the proposed uses. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jill to give you an overview of the project.
Thank you, Donna. And if you could share the screen with me, Miranda. If I can share my screen.
I unshared, Jill, so
okay, got it.
Yes, you should be good.
Switch to desktop app. Hope that's not. I hit the, can you see my screen? No?
When you click share content first, Jill. And then it should pop up a share content box, and then you pick whatever screen it is.
Can you see my screen? Ugh. Am I muted?
No, can you? No, I can't
hear you. Not see your screen, Jill. This is Cynthia. Did you hear Miranda? You have to click at the bottom next to start video where you see share content and then choose.
Switch to the desktop app or use the latest version.
If you need me, I can pull up that YouTube video if you need me to show it. Let me know if you need me to pull it up.
I'm failing.
Anna Flynn is sharing her content, Jill.
Yeah, I did that without even trying. I have the video.
Right.
No, that's not the video. I do have the video though. Let me pull it up.
Thanks, Donna.
Yeah, I thought I had it up, but I don't have it up. So I'm going to stop sharing and pull it up. So you guys don't have to do that. I don't know how the sound is gonna go. We'll try it. Okay. All right, let me try again. Let me know if you guys see it. Yes, are you seeing that? Yes, okay. Can you hear it? No.
We do not hear you.
Okay. Time. Can you hear that?
Yes.
No, I have that video. Oh, can you hear it? I can't hear it.
It's real quiet.
Yeah.
I have that same video pulled
Turn up the volume.
Nature in the fresh air or after enjoying the activities highlighting our place of nature. We are air, we are earth, we are water, we are fire, we are animals. And as we walk past the gift shop, we find the public programming space where 200 people can enjoy a live program. And at the back of the public program space, you can see the wildlife viewing window where visitors can relax and watch for signs of wildlife. Head up the stairs or take the elevator to the observation deck. This space can double as an outdoor classroom. Visitors can enjoy the night sky with no light pollution, or use the spotting scopes to spot the hawks or identify the mountain region where Boulder's water comes from. The site is at the entry point to a 3,200-acre preserve known as Mud Lake and Caribou Ranch open spaces. And it includes 16 miles of trails at 8,250 feet in elevation. As we return to the main floor, walk past the registration desk, pick up a self-guiding booklet to bring along on the trails, or ask questions about upcoming programs. Walk down the hall to the workspaces for volunteers and staff, and look down to the classrooms below where there's a maker space, large classrooms that can be made smaller, south-facing windows for botany exploration. Wild Bear Nature Center is located on the Peak to Peak Scenic Byway with easy access up via Boulder Canyon. A half-mile interpreted discovery trail loops around the building and ends up at the Nature Playscape, which stretches the entire eastern boundary of the property line. Back inside, the space below the floor holds classrooms, as well as all of the energy systems in space for storing educational materials and snowshoes. Head out the back door to the northern patio, which leads to the trails. If you look up, you can see the observation deck. Walk a little further and find the outdoor classroom and amphitheater, where people of all ages can enjoy an evening program, or the schools can bring their classrooms up to enjoy a snow school program with scientists before heading out on snowshoes for winter ecology or study the water at Mud Lake. As you head down toward the east side of the building, where it will be native landscape for low water consumption, you will see the entrance to the education spaces for children and adult programs facing the Nature Playscape, where children can create, build, play, and climb in nature as families relax and enjoy talking with friends in the fresh mountain air. Join us today on our journey to bring this long-time vision to fruition. Now more than ever, we need nature and nature needs us. And with your support, Wild Bear Nature Center will connect people with nature for generations to come.
Okay. All right. Okay. Glad that worked. Jill, can you hear us? I don't think she can hear us. So, I'm going to ask Jill to log back in.
Now I can hear.
Oh, you can. Okay.
Golly.
Great.
Sorry about that, how that happened. But anyway, I can speak to what the program is. That I don't know where we're at. I apologize. I could not hear anything.
It's okay. We just finished the video, Jill. So
Yes.
we can, if you want to say a few words, and then we can open up for questions from the Planning Commission.
Right. So the building will facilitate an amazing opportunity for the community, including just general visitation, to be able to go somewhere and play in the nature playscape, or, you know, hang out in the nature center and really become knowledgeable about our backyard. And so it's meant for families. As you can see, that amphitheater in the back will be a wonderful public program space, along with that space inside, so general public, and having programs, you know, sort of like a park service program where people can learn and understand, you know, any number of subjects having to do with our backyard. And so, yes, school groups will be coming, and our children's workshops will become more solid, and adult programming as well. So we're really proud of the work that our community, our committees, our board, our donors, and ARC 11 and Civitas and our design team have been just exceptional. So I think that's pretty much what I have to say. It's an incredible vision that's coming to life, a long time vision, and it's going to be nothing but an amazing asset to the community. And so I just would like to open it up to questions. I don't know if we addressed the bus parking question. I don't know if you want to address that, Donna.
Yeah. Yeah, so in our design right now, we do have a couple of spots identified for bus parking. We also have a circle for drop off, and we have the 29 parking spaces. So, so that's where we're at right now. We have done planning for bus parking. If there's additional buses to what we can accommodate in the current design, we would have to take them and park them off-site after dropping people or children off at the nature center. Ryan, would you add anything to that?
And you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Ryan from ARC 11. No, I think that covers it. Thanks, Donna.
Great. So I just think we can open it up for questions from our application.
Okay, this is Roger Cornell again. So at this time, without going to a whole lot of detail, if the planning commissioners have questions just about the process and about the drawings and the concept, let's ask those questions, then I will go, then we'll have the public hearing, and then we'll come back to really, at the public hearing, we will come back to really get our input and make decisions for the planning commission. So for general question now, just so we understand what this whole project's about, and what the concept is. Any commissioners have questions at this time?
This is Karen Blakemore. I have some questions. They might be, some of them might be more on the detailed side. Should I hold those for later or go ahead and ask?
Go ahead, Karen. Let's try it.
Okay. So the bus parking, is that on the one of the diagrams? I didn't notice it. I did see the 29 parking spaces, and I saw the circle one-way drive, but I didn't see any bus parking. So is that
Ryan?
an idea that?
Yeah, I believe it was on one of them. I don't have them all right in front of me. So I'm going to ask Ryan if he knows which one that's in.
Okay.
I am not, I don't think, I mean, I'm looking at the parking plans right now. And I don't see that we have a dedicated spot. I think we've got a widened area where the drop-off zone is, where I think we've talked about a bus being able to park there, kind of at the, I guess, southwest corner of that. That's, yeah, as I'm looking at the parking plan, and I think, I know at one point, and I'm not sure if this was still on the table, that we had talked about potentially buses, being able to drop off and then go park, I think at the Caribou Room potentially, but I'm not sure where we left off with that.
Or at the elementary school. Or at the community center. Oh, okay. And then also along the lines of transportation, will you have bike racks or some support for cyclists? And have you thought at all about like public transportation from the park and ride? I know the RTD heads the other direction towards Eldora. It'd be really nice if it came up towards the community center and the Caribou Room and the this nature center. But perhaps in the future it'd be desirable to have some sort of transportation from the park and ride to
Absolutely. Absolutely. So in terms of bikes, we won't be allowing bikes on our trail on our property, but we will have bike racks. The county did create a new trail connect for us, so that's great, and there'll be a bike rack up there, and then likely another bike rack down towards the entry point. In terms of the bus, that definitely will be on the list. It would be just fantastic if, just as a community as a whole, if we could have a nice little electric bus that zips people all over town would be amazing. But yeah, that is something that has been talked about.
Okay, great. I didn't see anything about drainage on the plans. I did see, although I saw a swell along the northern side of the drive, and it looks like the property slopes towards the north. And I have walked it, and yeah, it does kind of slope that way. Is there anything specific? Could you speak to the drainage on the site?
Sure. I think the property slopes primarily from uphill on the west to the east with a slight tilt to the north.
Okay.
So at the existing aspen grove there, we're trying to sort of enhance water collection there. So from the building as well as coming from uphill to basically kind of channel that through that region, where it's already sort of naturally there and supporting that aspen grove. And then, I think from the building, we'd be directing some of the water out to that grove. And then I think elsewhere, I don't think we've gotten fully into the weeds with civil yet in terms of other swales or catchments. But, I think we'd be, largely trying to direct that to swales or areas where that can just sort of percolate down into the soil.
Okay. Do you have any specific plans for trash at this time and composting and recycling? And where will those be collected and stored?
So we've got, in addition to the primary structure, we do have an outdoor, a separate structure to the north of the building, and then also a room on the lower level of the building, a storage room kind of near a door leading to the exterior where we intend to potentially store recycling and trash, and that would then be wheeled out to the turnaround or potentially, use a gator or other small vehicle to transport that. And then Don or Jill, could you step in? I think we'd have to bring that out to the street ultimately for pickup by the town.
Yeah, so right across the street is the green boxes, so that's where it would go. But we have also would have public receptacles for recycling and trash, doggy poop bags and other things that will then need to be maintained and brought out to the green boxes.
Okay, great. And then my last question has to do with water and sewer needs. According to Chris Pelletier, the town is currently at 50 to 60% capacity on both water and waste treatment. Do you have any idea what your anticipated water usage will be and the amount of wastewater you'll be producing?
I would have to go through, I think our consultants may have started to dig into that, but I'm not sure if we've got specific numbers. So I'd have to look at some information and touch base with our civil and sustainability to get back to you on that.
Okay, great. And then I saw that you'll be irrigating some of the plantings. And I'm wondering if you could find plantings that wouldn't require any irrigation.
It'll be all low water native planting.
Native planting, and I restore the land to, to a much more healthy native landscape environment than it is now. And so any irrigation would be to help those plants take root, but the goal would be that they are all low water, xeriscaping natives.
Okay, wonderful. That's all my questions.
Okay, this is Roger Cornell again. Is there any other commissioners have questions? Who wants to go next? And Karen, those were good questions.
I have a question. This is Linda. On entering the main entrance to the facility, is there an emergency exit off of the facility?
An emergency exit. So there's 3 exits, actually 4 exits, right, Ryan? There's the front door, there's the back patio, there's the downstairs classroom, actually has 2 exits. And then there's the upstairs viewing area. So there's actually 5 exits.
And on the property itself, are there the main entrance to the property, the site? Is there an emergency exit off the site, not the building?
First,
yes.
No, have not planned that in. Right now, it's the one driveway with the loop.
Correct.
I think the concern would be if there were a lot of traffic exiting, if there were 2 ways to exit the property. Has that been considered at all?
No, I don't think we have considered that. I think it's a good thing for us to think about and consider.
Especially with all the fires we're having.
Huh?
I think part of the constraint is that the property itself, is sort of on this hillside in the forest, and we only have a very small amount of street frontage. So that's, by the time we have our driveway going in there, given that sort of the steep slope there, I don't think we could enlarge that sort of entry to the drive onto the property, but we have, I think, 80 feet maybe of street frontage.
It seems like you could exit that property at any place within that whole area onto the CR 128. But I don't know if you need an official second exit, but I think it's not, I don't think it's that unusual to think that if it's an emergency, they're going to just drive right up onto County Road 128 off. I think you could do it now, but.
Okay, is any other, thank you, Linda. Is there anybody else have any questions at this time?
And just to note that there is only one exit with the Mud Lake property on the other side, but.
Yes, right. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good comment. Steve, you have anything?
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions. What's the occupancy of the building? I may have missed that when I read through the packet.
It is a mixture of occupancies. There's business where they have administrative portion in the upstairs. There's also education as well as assembly, and then part of it is an exhibition space. So that, I guess, is probably closest to museum.
Right, I was sort of getting at what's the total occupancy that the building can hold?
Got it.
With all the activities.
Got it. Let me see if we got that.
I thought we talked about that earlier.
So while he's looking that up, I'll just also comment that because it is a multifunctional building, we don't expect that all the activities would be going on all at the same time. So classrooms, of course, would be in use for after-school programs or weekend programs. The main gathering area, which in the video spoke to a 200% occupancy, would be for special events.
Have to go
and for hosting guests coming and going for the exhibits. So, so just to point out that because of the multifunctional use, the different parts of the building would be heavily used at different times.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I was just sort of trying to get a handle on what you think the max occupancy might be at like the busiest times when you have classes going. Maybe there's lectures, maybe there's visitors, that sort of thing.
Jill, you're muted. I would say our estimate has been about 200.
200 in public programming. But
Yeah.
I think we said 300 would be, during those bigger events would be a max. I mean, I guess we have 50, if we had 50 to 75 kids down below, we wouldn't have necessarily a big event going on. So it probably is around 200 to 300 at a peak point,
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
And that's in the narrative. So.
Okay, I may have missed that, but so Jill, just a quick question. You mentioned perhaps trying to start construction in April, and how many funds are needed before you think you could get started?
That's a very fluid answer because it is depending on it depends on fundraising, right? We're in the midst of a quiet phase fundraising right now. Our hope would be that we would raise 75% of our goal, and then it would be the whole community rallying around to raise money for the bump it over the top. So, it just all depends. We're in a pandemic. We're in an election year. I can't answer the question. Our anticipated move-in date would be October 2022. It would be really great to get, moving on construction of some part of it to start. Actually, launching it the next summer would be wise. Just depends on where we're at.
Right. I was just sort of curious, what percent of your goal before you could actually start to do some construction.
Mm-hmm. Well, we hope to get our compost toilets in there. That's part of our beginning. And then next spring, we'll evaluate where we are financially to launch, because we, of course, don't want to do any kind of launching of construction if we don't think we're going to actually make our goal, right?
Right.
Not to be negative in any way, because we're making quite a lot of progress. It's very exciting. So
that's good.
I have great
and then the final question is, have you talked to the Caribou Room? What's the status of your discussions with them with regard to parking or overflow, like bus parking, whatever you need? They seem to be on board, or have you started that yet?
Yes, we have started that. Kevin has been leading the conversations with Peter Fiore, so I'm going to hand that over to him. Kevin, we can't hear you.
I can speak if he's not. We've talked with Caribou Room and Peter Fiore, and they are very supportive of us using their lot. We have in the past with Enchanted Forest, we have an agreement there. There's nothing in writing, but it's we'll be using their parking when needed.
Okay, so you do expect to have like an agreement with them in writing at some point, correct?
That would be good, yes.
Yeah. No, I think it would be very good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then with regard to parking, you say that there are, I guess, 29 spaces. Is there the option if you needed to add more? And I'm thinking about when Wild Bear becomes world famous, you may want to add parking. Is that possible as part of the site plan?
I think we would have to go back and look at that. We currently have designed our parking to have minimal impact on landscaping. So taking an approach of really trying to save as many trees as possible and tucking the parking in. So we could definitely go back and look and have a plan B for growth. Mm-hmm. And I also think what Cynthia mentioned earlier was the first I had heard about the conversation about potential street parking spots on Indian Peaks Road. I think that's a great idea that we should also explore.
This is Cynthia. I just wanted to say that was something that came up by Public Works Manager Chris Pelletier, also mentioned by Larry Johns, Police Chief, and Fire Marshal Rick Henriksen. And they all thought that would be a good idea. Larry Johns also mentioned a need for berming and concern about erosion if there was to be parking up there. There already is parking up there that straddles the road. So if there were angled parking potentially, Chris Pelletier said he would entertain the idea of that if Wild Bear was willing to survey the road and we could see what that road is and work with the town to develop parking up there. It would not just be Wild Bear parking, it would be town parking that could be utilized. And I think that would actually benefit Caribou Room as well, because they definitely have had wonderful events that have exceeded the parking on site. And while I think it could be beneficial to have people go the Wild Bear Nature Center from the Caribou Room, it may not be as beneficial to have festival goers use the Wild Bear lot as a supplemental parking lot. Just given the differing uses and times and things like that. Not to say that people wouldn't be responsible coming from a show, but I think it's probably better in a planning mindset to consider Caribou Room using their own parking, and if there's some off-street parking there, that would be beneficial. What was discussed is the width of the road may allow it on both the south and the north side, but if you were to put parking on the south side between the end of Caribou Room's parking or entrance and the school, that it would be a vision clearance issue. But if they were parking on the north side along the road, it wouldn't be a vision clearance issue for anyone. So just an additional thought. We hadn't discussed that with Wild Bear. That was just something that came up as the town staff viewed the consideration and thought about where additional parking could happen, given that, as Steve said, it probably will be witnessed.
Yeah, that's sort of what I was getting at, is to maybe think a little further ahead about the parking and possible expansion, whether it's on the road, where to put the buses, add more spaces. Think about a 2-story parking garage quite yet, but but you never know. But anyway, no, seriously, maybe think about maybe a more future parking options, in the event that we need them. So.
Don't forget there's a conservation easement, Steve. There won't be any parking garage.
Okay.
We don't want to start any rumors in town.
No, and I don't think we would want one anyway. So I was
just making sure you know that would never happen.
that was a joke. That was a joke.
I know it was.
Yeah.
I know it was.
Okay, that's all I have, Roger.
Is there any other trustees, commissioners want to speak, or any questions at this time? I just want to make a quick comment then, and I will, when we go back to the round, I'll add a few more things. Been taking notes, but about the parking on the street there, I just want to say that I certainly have worked from the beginning on Mud Lake, and I think we have 2 unique uses there. And both times it actually was a Lenny Cole's excavation. And, and very, very specifically, and a special review for the Caribou Room. And, the parking was very much dedicated to be on site. And that's why you had that whole cleared, the Caribou Room, and that parking's there. There's actually been very few events that they've actually parked out on the road until we had the COVID thing and they started doing the evening concerts. And they weren't able to, they spread out the parking there. But I think Chris Perret can even speak of that. There's very few times that a few cars park out on the road, very limited time. Also, when going all the way back to 2000, when we worked on the Mud Lake plan and put the trailhead up there at the school road, it was very specific discussion at that time about what they didn't actually want that to be. We didn't want that at the town. I want that to be a parking area, and that's why there's some boulders there, and people do park there. The whole idea was to keep rural setting of Indian Peaks as you approach the subdivision, as you turn in there. So I think I can understand why the issue is for parking, but I think when you think of the neighborhood and the people that are have bought those nice homes, the 18 homes there, and even the ones that by the school, as you turn to look drive down that avenue, and there actually is a beautiful view, as you well know, Jill, of the Indian Peaks there. And as you look down that lane, you see a very rural lane. And I would hope that parking on the street would be an absolute last resort, because that would be a total change of the whole atmosphere of the area, and actually the change in the 20 years of the planning for those 2 blocks there. So, but then let's go on. I think we need to get the public input at this time. So is
Can I
there anybody?
respond to that, actually? Can I respond to
Okay,
that?
fine, Jill.
Because I think your point is very important. That curve there, as you head into that rural road, is a very dangerous curve. When you have Kinnick Trailhead and the rural road going in that curve, and on an icy day, that's there's not even there would have to be some kind of stop sign, I think, there, right? If we had a lot of people turning around and backing up. And so I think that that's something really worth considering, is if we are going to have any diagonal parking, it should probably remain quite close to the highway area, and right near across from the Caribou Room, and maybe a limit to how far down it can be extended. I just thought I would agree. I think that's a tricky area.
And I would say that, I was speaking just on the north side, not on the south side, for that. And that was just an additional thought. And it would have to be close to Indian Peaks Drive, because it would have to be within the expanse of the town's right of way, because otherwise it would be on county property. And I don't think permission, Jill.
Right, so we'd have to look at where our property line is and see if there's any way of doing any diagonal parking along that road. I'm not sure, because you're right, that is partly county land, so.
Yeah, so I would say, obviously, as a last resort, if it can be contained on site, that would be wonderful. But I think that thinking ahead and trying to plan ahead, given that there are not many nature centers in the area, so the popularity of this program, it's already very popular, going to the Tebow Shopping Center. So I can imagine when you have a world-class center, if you are given approval for that it would be a popular destination.
Let's do it. All right, is there anybody from the public? It is a public hearing, so I'll open the public portion. Is there anybody listening that wants to speak to this project? Anybody there? So those names that we have looking at are all members of the team. I guess that's correct. Anybody from the public want to speak? Okay, if not, I will close the public hearing.
You can speak in support or opposition, and if anyone does want to speak, please tell us your name and if you live in Netherland or where you live.
I'd like to speak.
Okay, we will give you 3 minutes to speak. Michael Reichert.
Yes, Michael Reichert.
Name and address.
Sure. Michael Reichert, 508 West 3rd Street. I'm the Director of Operations at Wild Bear. I'm speaking in support of the project. I'm so excited about all the work we've done. This is going to be a destination for people from all over. And we have an opportunity to educate the general public on such important issues, whether it's fire mitigation, how to conserve water. The possibilities are endless. Having been with the organization for 2.5 years, I know the need for this facility, not only for our programming, but for visitors to the area and locals. So I won't take up too much time because I know a lot of Wild Bears want to speak. And thank you for your time.
Is there
Thanks,
anybody
Michael.
public?
I would also like to speak, please.
You can please state your name and your address.
My name is Michelle Whitty, and I am the Nature Education Director for Wild Bear. And I'm just going to echo everything that's been stated by Mike, as well as add a little bit of perspective that this will be a really good resource for children in the area near and far, and especially our local families. There will be, our education programs will be able to grow exponentially and be able to provide an at-home play space, place for them to fall in love with nature and their home. So close to Netherland Elementary, the partnership opportunities with that place are endless with the community center and other organizations and businesses throughout Netherland and Boulder County, Gilpin. It will be a resource for Coloradans and people traveling throughout the country. And I think we're going to be able to really step up the tourist opportunities as well as opportunities for our local community in an extremely beneficial way.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Does anyone else want to submit public comment? 3 minutes to speak.
I would like to speak. This is Hillary Katz, and I do live in Gilpin County, but I am a Wild Bear board member and parent, and I've been part of the Netherland community for over 15 years. I want to speak in support of this new nature center and echoing what Michelle was saying. There has been a lot of speak tonight about how this is a destination, but I think our community here, how we can support and educate the children within our community and care for this super fragile ecosystem up here. And Jill did an amazing job for the past 25 years of the Peaks Wilderness. Just seems like a phenomenon to bear forward and to keep it, really provide Boulder campus. Thank you for hearing me.
Thanks, Hillary. Anyone else from the public want to submit public comment?
Can I say something?
Who's
Jill?
speaking?
Can I be part of the public?
No, Jill, you are the applicant. Nice try.
Jill, you cannot, but when we're all done here, at the close of the public hearing, you can comment on anything that was spoken from the public hearing. Is there anybody from the public, anybody else want to speak at this time? If not, then, okay, then Jill, you do have a moment here to follow up any comments, but they were all in favor of your project and all your partners.
We have great team. This is a great community grassroots team. I feel very proud. Our work together, it's been amazing. And I just had a couple things. You know, I think a lot of times families in our community don't have a lot to do, you know. And I just think this adds just one more thing for families to do together. It's a family community opportunity where they can bring their kids to the place, have a picnic and hang out, or go check out the museum. Or so I just think that I just wanted to mention that. And the other part, I think it's going to be a really positive economic impact to Netherland. You know, I'd like to try to, together with the town, look at DOLA money perhaps, or there's some economic development grants, or because I think there are some opportunities for Wild Bear to really help town of Netherland grow in terms of positive identity development and bringing people to this community for a very positive reason. So that's my last soapbox pitch.
Okay, then I will, if there's nobody else to speak, I will close the public hearing portion of it and bring it back to the Planning Commission for our go-around comments. And because I actually did have a couple questions, usually go at the end, I would like to ask a couple of questions, which I probably should have done there, but I was so much wanted to get to the public portion. So as part of the project though, Jill, there was outdoor sales and other outdoor commercial activities. And I don't think we spoke to them yet. Could you speak to, what are the outdoor sales and the other outdoor commercial activities? Part of the abstract.
I think we were trying to stretch our uses into the crazy uses you already have in your code. But we do rent snowshoes. That's an outdoor commercial, activity, correct? We might have a coffee cart outside on the front, with muffins or whatever for people to enjoy. I think that's all I can really, our programs are outdoor and they cost money sometimes. So I don't know if that's why we have that. But.
Yeah, the use of the amphitheater as well. So potential, musicians or events in the outdoor amphitheater.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as Jill noted, there's a bunch of uses that are on the site. And as Jill noted, we were trying to fit that into our use group chart. So as I was quoting it in the agenda information memorandum, I was taking the entire text of that portion so that it was less about the outdoor sales and more about the outdoor activities of that that bunch of uses that pertain to outdoor stuff.
Okay, but she certainly answered the question, so I was exactly
Sure did.
right. The other one, Jill, then is, and we'll certainly continue to work ahead, would be you're just flashing something up. Okay, I see what you said. Gotcha. Is the, the night lights and the lighting scheme. So we did not speak of that at all in any of the presentation, but obviously, I look across that horizon there, so I'm a little concerned. So could you address the lighting and especially the night light activity?
It's a good question. We're going to mostly operate dawn to dusk like county. But we may have a night sky viewing, which wouldn't be pathetic if we had night lights. So I think that our night lights will probably be motion censored lights, should we have any kind of riffraff happening. Other than that, I just don't see how we would have any real lights on the property imposing on nature and your experience.
I understand that, so that's very good. I just wanted to bring that up.
But there is security issues too.
Sure,
So you get like downward lighting, stuff like that.
Right. Censored lights.
We would abide by the Boulder County standards for downward facing lights to preserve the night skies.
Right.
That's also the Netherlands standards is downcast lighting. And then I would only say, obviously, in the wintertime, well, we're losing our light. So would you say, Jill or Donna, that the lighting would be contained to the drive-in parking area, but not really throughout the majority of the site? Maybe like trail lights or something like that, if you did, but that the majority of any larger lights would be contained toward the parking area and toward the ingress and egress there.
Yeah,
I would say towards the. I would also say towards the entrances, right? So in the back of the building, on there would probably need to be a light at the doors.
Motion sensors.
And that's not just on the parking side, but it would definitely be contained to the building perimeter and the parking area, if that makes sense.
That's helpful, Donna. Thank you.
But I think also it's important to note that we would be operating majority of the time dawn to dusk, just like the county. Unless we had a special evening program, which then we would have lights on the parking lot.
Okay, I understand that, Jill. It was just more, and I understand the activities. It was just more, how the property's left at night. So I understand. I know you feel the same way I do about keeping the natural footprint there. So let's go around. This is the planning commission. Everybody's been patient. So is there anybody who wants to give their comments and speak? And otherwise, we'll just go through the list.
Just go through the list.
Okay, Chris Bray, are you there? Let's start with Chris.
All right, questions. Question 1, parking. How many of those 29 lots are going to be used by staff? Second, I am against motion sensor lights because center, you have up there. It's going to be turning your lights off and on all the time. Third is, can you have all of your lighting, exterior lighting, solar powered, so you wouldn't have an issue if you had a blackout? You hear all that?
Number one, we do have designated parking for staff in the back of the building.
How many spots would that be, Jill?
Ryan, can you speak to that? I don't recall. Ryan, still there?
Yeah, I'm still there. That was something we talked about at one point, but we ended up keeping all the road and all the parking to the sort of south and east of the building. So I think the thought was that the staff parking would be part of those 29 spots.
Oh, my bad.
And if you're planning on having events of 300 people, 29 parking spaces won't work.
And that's why we're also talking to Fiore for those events. Those events would be 2 to 4 times a year.
Thank you on that. And the other thing is emergency vehicle egress.
I think we talked about that, didn't we?
Yes, it's in the fire department. It certainly talked about that they met the standards.
Any other questions?
Questions, Chris?
That's all the questions I have. For other questions that were asked by the other commissioners.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Let's go to Jim Reese. Your comments, sir.
You there, Jim?
Commissioner Reese? Did we lose you? I think we may have lost for the moment. Do you want to?
Circle back.
Yeah, we'll circle back to him. Stephanie Herring, are you there? Hi, Stephanie.
I don't see him on the list.
Stephanie, are you there?
I certainly am. Thank you very much. Hey, Steve, how's it going? Yeah, I think that overall, much like a lot of the other commissioners and questions, certainly the parking, I think, is going to be the biggest issue. When you go down to Mud Lake on a weekend, in the summertime especially, that lower parking area can become completely full. And so thinking about this from the perspective of recognizing that some folks will use that as overflow parking just for general mud lake recreation and not necessarily just to go to the nature center, I think is important to acknowledge. And I guess, anything that's along the street, I'm assuming will be the town's responsibility to enforce in terms of ensuring that there's adequate space on the streets and that normal traffic can get through, especially for people who live in that area and live on Sunnyside, getting to and from their homes. So I do think it's important to think about. I don't know if there's necessarily a solution. I think that Mud Lake is inherently incredibly popular, and this will drive more activity to that area. I guess I am kind of curious to know if from the nature center's perspective, you are trying to enforce a situation where people are parking in your parking lot in order to take advantage of the nature center specifically, or if they're just parking there to have access to the Mud Lake trails. And have you considered whether or not that's something that you should address, or are you willing to just be the overflow parking from Mud Lake?
I think that's a really, really good question. If they had left maybe that nice trail directly to Mud Lake where they put the fence up and all the trees over the trail, I think that it would be more of a concern that people would park there to go hike to Mud Lake. My guess is going to be that people are going to park in that parking lot to go enjoy the nature center and walk that little trail, and they may get on that connector trail to Kinnikinnick. But it is something to think about in terms of how we might manage that, should it become an issue. But, I think the more people that are out, I would guess that the draw of going to Mud Lake and having them then engage with the nature center is only a plus before they go hike around Mud Lake. So.
Mm-hmm. My only other question was, in terms of the main parking lot, do you intend to have any kind of advertising down there for people who do park at the main parking lot to consider hiking up to the nature center and checking it out and engaging with the nature?
Oh, you mean on the other side, on the north side?
In that capacity?
Yes, they will be changing that sign over there to include the nature center on the south side. Yes. So they can hike all the way down there easily, and that's a nice hike, then come back.
Any other?
Yeah, I mean, I've no significant. I think that, the parking will have to work itself out over time. Something to be aware of, but certainly not a reason to stop this from moving forward.
Those are good questions.
Okay, next is up Karen Blakemore. Would you like to speak?
Sure. So I think Wild Bear is a really wonderful asset for our community, and that this project will make it even more of a good asset for the community. And I think the location of this is really good because it's accessible to people, as well as being close to Mud Lake and Caribou Ranch. I'm happy to see that you're coordinating overflow parking with the Caribou Room. And I'm also happy to see that you're using and encouraging alternative modes of transportation, such as the shuttles and bikes, and maybe supporting school buses as well. So I'm definitely in favor of this application, and I don't see anything that I would add to the draft SRU application, SRU agreement.
Next up would be Billy Giblin. Are you there, Billy?
I am. And I just want to say, first off, I was kind of curious since my son goes to Wild Bear this summer, and presently I had reached out to Miranda, Cynthia, Karen to see if I need to recuse myself. They said no because I'm a customer. I'm not involved with them in the business sense other than that. So so I can be involved. And yeah, I really don't have, all in all, it looks good and sounds good. And I'm excited for it for my kids as I hear more about it. And I agree with, most everything I've heard. And I agree with what Chris said about, I'm not a huge fan of the motion sensor lights between wildlife and cars going by. They might just be going on a lot more than needed. And the only question I have is about signs. Like, what kind of signage would you have on the road about, to label the place as Wild Bear?
We will have a sign at the same place that the ice rink has a sign on the highway there, along with the school sign. So there'll be a nature center sign on that. That's our hope. We do have a sign agreement with our conservation easement, so we can't do anything crazy around our signage at the gate or at our facility, but we do intend to do something classy and informative to the community. We're integrating a lot of art into our vision, so I know that we'll be doing some beautiful entry point that will be very attractive. But in terms of any kind of gaudy anything, I don't see it happening. We'll have the highway sign there, and then we'll have a subtle, beautiful art piece there at the gate, and at the trail will go right in.
Oh, here they are. Okay.
Those are my only real questions. Thanks.
And Steve and Roger are back. We were gone there for a while. Were you the only ones who were out? Cynthia?
Hard to say. I was typing minutes. I didn't notice, but we had just heard from Commissioner Giblin, and I don't know if Jim Reese has joined us again. He's back.
And I'm still here, Linda.
And Linda.
Okay. What was Jim Reese there?
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry about that.
Okay, Jim. Okay, is there any comments, any questions you have, Jim?
Okay. Sorry about that. I accidentally hit the turn off button instead of the unmute. So I think this looks like a great opportunity for the entire community and the town of Nederland as a whole. I did want to first ask a question of the staff. This is a special review use for the lot, but a lot of these questions, the drainage, traffic, lighting, will all be addressed again once there's building permit. That'll all be reviewed. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. But given that they are asking permission, it does allow questions to come forth and to consider impacts on the property and how to plan out of them now and trying to deal with that later. But yes, all this stuff would actually be reviewed. So we'd be looking at the setbacks on the property, those accessory playscapes and other things would have to consider the side and the rear accessory setbacks and other things like that. But we would review all of these aspects specifically during the building construction phase, building permitting phase.
Thanks. I just wanted to make sure to clarify that for anybody, if there's any public listening or anybody that seems like there's a lot of questions that some of these things haven't been developed. There's still a lot of time in the process, and they will be addressed, and they'll be getting into the giddy details on all those things. So I'm glad we were able to bring some of those things up for thought for you when you come to that. But I know that all these will be addressed when we see this again. I think it's a great project, and I look forward to seeing it become a reality in our community. Thanks for getting behind this, Jill.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay, Linda Glasser, are you there?
I'm still here. I know this has been a long worked out process, and Jill, I appreciate all your time and effort in this. I think it's really important for the community. And I know you're just getting bombarded with all kinds of questions, but I think it's a very good asset for the community. So I'm in favor of it.
We welcome the questions. Thank you, Linda.
All right, Steve Williams.
Well, I am also extremely pleased with the plan and with the center and 100% behind it. Since you're looking for feedback to look into, these are things we already talked about. I just wanted to make sure they were kind of on the list as to take a look at the drainage. And I think we talked about getting some water and wastewater estimates. Look at possible emergency evacuation, or at least have another way out in the event of fire or tree falls down across the road. This written parking agreement with Caribou Room, I think, would be important to have as part of the approval. And this, and I think what's on everyone's mind is the parking, possible future expansion or having enough spots, particularly for large gatherings, and that's obviously tied into the agreement with the Caribou Room. And a lighting plan that came up as well. Those were the main issues. Oh, and the comment about bike racks, I think, was not so much people parking a bike and taking it on the trails, but taking a bike to the and a trash and recycling plan as well. Yeah, I did mention that. Bus parking. Bus parking would be part of the parking plan. Okay, so that's just a quick summary, I think, and if missed anything, people can speak to it.
So, yeah, Steve kind of went, I mean, that was great. Steve and I, obviously are sitting together, so we've been working on a list of all the comments that Karen, at the beginning, Karen brought up the water and sewer and the use of utility plan. How much are they really using? So that list, let me just put that out there. I think that, does anybody have a problem with those? Those were the issues that I think we spoke of. And I think to address what Jim was saying, Jim Reese was saying, I understand what Jim's saying, but I think going through this process and giving the Wild Bear the input so that they can plan all these points, so when they go to the Board of Trustees, they will have them all prepared as part of their packet. So that's why this is actually a very positive process to go through, even though, yes, it might come up a year from now during building, but it needs to be talked about now, and it needs to also be planned so that when you bring this to the Board of Trustees, you have this whole list of issues that you can speak of. I just want to speak very broadly, and I guess, Jill and I have sat down over the years, speak again, a little bit of, and I only bring it up there because you have several of your board members there, and it's that balancing act, which actually some of you have spoke of. The idea that now we're speaking of a destination. I don't know if it's truly that way, but Cynthia, even in her abstracts, used the term tourist destination. I can understand that. But the issue is, and Stephanie spoke of it too earlier, that the impact on, and part of it's COVID, but over the years, we've seen the impact on what I'll call now the north parking lot, and the trails and the walking, where before you certainly could walk down there, residents of Netherland would walk down there, and you would actually find yourself like you were lost in the wilderness. So over the years, and I understand this, now as we bring more and more people in, you have the north parking lot, now we have this, especially if we start making your parking lot a destination parking. I think part of your mission is going to be lost just because of the impact of all the people there. So something will be lost. not saying yes or no, right or wrong. And I'm just speaking to that so that your board and your group can continue to work on that. How do we have 300 people, walking down the trails, or say today there's like 30 people walking down the trails on a Sunday afternoon, and still keep that experience and all those things together. And I'm a very close neighbor, as you know, but I'm also 72 years old. So I've learned that I'm not going to burn any gas over this or get worried about it one way or the other, because it's actually for the next generation to move forward to make this a reality and to really experience it. So, but I just wanted to make those comments and challenge you that it is, as you said, it is a balancing act. So I want to ask, so Steve gave a good list, which I think Cynthia obviously wrote down, from the water and sewer all the way down to the parking plan. Does anybody else have anything else that we should add to that list to make recommendations to the Board of Trustees? And does everybody agree with the list that Steve spoke of? Anybody have any issues with that?
Roger, this is Karen Blakemore. I'm wondering if we want to add just a bullet summarizing what you said about keeping a balance between providing the number of people on the trails and, keeping that kind of balance of making this available to many people, but not overcrowding the area. I don't know how we.
I don't know how you do that either, but I think Jill understands what I said. It may be part of their mission statement or introduction to that, just as you go forward, have that maybe as part of the bullets of, the understanding of the, the wonderful area. So Jill, I'll ask comments, but maybe that's just part of your mission statement, that you have part of that where, yes, it's an impact, but you also have the impact to preserve the Mud Lake and the Wild Bear area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really a legitimate concern for sure. The Front Range is exploding, and we have a lot of traffic coming from Estes Park to I-70 that floats through. And you drive up Boulder Canyon and you have people risking their lives to go to Boulder Falls. And so, I think some of this that we're describing is not going to change with Wild Nature Center, unfortunately. The fact is they're coming, they're here. When you read the stories of people going to Hesse and leaving their trash, throwing their trash out on the trail, and the bear that got shot this summer, and lots of disrespect for nature, even though we want people to get out in nature, there's a lot of disrespect. So our hope is that we send off good stewards on the trails, and it may, we do have to sustain ourselves. There has to be an economic business plan, right? But, and that is a balancing act. But the fact is people are scrambling to get into nature and they have no idea what to do. So our hope is that we're sending out great stewards to the planet that will care for our community and our peaks and our natural spaces more than they are now. The fact is they're here and they're coming in droves, right? So to me, the best thing we can do is help to educate them. Our plan.
And this is Cynthia. I would say that given that it's an environmental education center, I think that part of the meat of what they would be discussing at the Nature Center, and perhaps it deserves an exhibit about the balancing act that happens living up at the altitude that we do, being so high in the watershed, all those considerations. I know up on Trail Ridge Road and you stop there at their center, they'll talk about the soil and the damage that can happen in the different animals and things like that. So maybe that's a consideration to impart to our young and 2 to 90 stewards of the forest, of recognizing that we are increasing our density in the state of Colorado, in the county of Boulder, in Nederland, in the areas that are surrounding us in the county, and helping people understand that when you have 3 people trails, that widens the trails. And so I imagine that would be part of the on-site education. Yes, Jill?
I didn't
That
say
sound
anything.
about right?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Absolutely.
Okay. An opportunity for education, which is what you guys do.
Right, and that's the whole point, is we have a lot of the general public coming to our area, and to just ignore that is a mistake. And so I think that, it is one place outside of town that people can stop and learn a little something before they get out on a trail, and they will head right into the town of Nederland, and maybe they'll be just a little more knowledgeable about the moose that's walking across the highway or down by the park,
Dogs and how they're perceived.
Right.
And so, I mean, I'm a neutral party here, but I think it's a good opportunity to educate, and also for folks to understand that just living at altitude and living where we live is a delicate ecosystem that we have to preserve, and they would be taking part in preservation or impact to it.
Yeah, and I think just the fact that the cleanup, and we have the bus over there, and the bus is a great opportunity for just educating about what community can do. Our community came together and removed 30 tons of trash from that small piece of property. And what an incredible story to tell the general community about what community can do, both positive and negative, and how can we help keep our community clean. We can have a reputation around that. So that's our goal. And, we're not going to stop all these tourists. We're not going to be the reason for them either. We are going to be educating them as they come through, and they will be good stewards after they've left us. And I look forward to having those families come out and feel pride of where we live, and our backyard is worth preserving every single day, not just in 2000. But right now.
Okay.
This is Karen Garrity. I just wanted to say a couple things. One is, as you're talking through this, Chairman and Vice Chair, this list you're creating, are those conditions that you're recommending for the SRU agreement?
Yes, I think so. We would like these to be, we're just having them, as I said, conditions that they would bring to address and answer for the Board of Trustees. Yes.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
So I do have a question though. I don't know. I'm not an engineer, a civil engineer. I'm a dreamer. But the drainage water, wastewater estimate, I really don't know how easy that is to pull off. So I don't know when we are before the Board of Trustees for approval on this, but, we do want to be able to get approvals. Maybe some of that is something that is recommended before we come before permitting.
Well, I'm thinking that maybe this is an estimate that you can get from the town. And I was
okay.
Get that a little bit from asking what the occupancy of the building was, because I think you can kind of estimate that number. It doesn't have to be wired, obviously, but
yeah.
Get an idea of the impact.
But I think a drainage plan, doesn't that require a
civil engineer? And your wastewater and water impact would be determined by your engineer looking at the different type of uses and occupancy and things and determining that, which you may or may not have done. Stage of the game.
Yeah, I think we started to look into the occupant load, but haven't fully got there yet. But all those things are things that we could address as we move forward with the project.
That's the whole point. That's the whole point.
Absolutely.
Right, and you wouldn't want them at the Board of Trustees level, oh, let's start talking about, it. But yes, those, at some point, all those, the water, sewer, the use of them and the utility use and the drainage plan, and you actually spoke to that, Ryan, of diverting the water, but that's a very large building, that's a very large roof, so during some of the downpours, there's gonna be a lot of water that's gonna be diverted, so that's what the drainage plan is. And for Cynthia and staff, just want to emphasize in the parking plan and what was spoken of, that they need to actually make sure they separate the employee parking from those 29. So we're just saying that parking plan, and you can work on it, but the employee parking certainly was a question that came up. It should be separated so that, you know, and the bus parking is very important. So all those aspects should be part of that. Because certainly many of the commissioners spoke of the biggest issue could be possibly the parking, and we realize it's not day in, day out, but it could be, as the impact grows, it could become a potential problem. And the street parking should actually be used as a last resort. Okay.
And the caribou room.
Well, that caribou room is part of the plan for sure.
And Cornell, Chairman Cornell.
Yes.
As you know, our town attorney is also on tonight for this particular concern, and she's got a few things to say.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure. So this list that you're going over, I know that Karen Garrity clarified that the list is conditions of approval. And I think some of these things seem to be more along the lines of information that you're requesting that the applicant bring to the Board of Trustees to consider in its approval. You know, I don't know that in the SRU agreement that a condition that there be a drainage plan, that's really part of the agreement. Do you understand what I'm saying? That the conditions would be more like that you want all downcast lighting, or that the drainage meets a certain requirement. Information is really not a condition. Does that make sense?
Well, yes and no, but I'm not certain if you're saying that these are not conditions, these should be requests for information. So we can't do ask that they would address the drainage problem as a condition of.
Do we know? I mean, I think that the issue is, do we know if there is a drainage problem? I don't think we know that, do we?
Well, that's why you do a drainage plan.
Right, but we don't know that there's a drainage problem without getting this information.
Right, so we definitely need that, I think.
And a drain, in general, would come at the construction phase, unless that's something that is noted as an issue that it is wanting to be brought forward. But there would certainly be, if you were to say they need a drainage plan, that would happen at the building phase. Regardless of whether or not you said it in the agreement, that would happen. They would be addressing drainage at the building phase, unless you're asking for them to address it now. That's why I said I'm not sure if they would even have a drainage plan, because at this point, I don't know that, they haven't made all their construction plans because they don't have the approval.
Okay.
So some of those plans, but if that is, if that is requested, if there specific request on the drainage plan, just to tag on to what Attorney Madsen was saying, but if you said they must have a drainage plan, that would be done.
Well, then you just tell us of that list, which ones, I'll let staff do it, but those are, the issues that we heard the commissioner speak of. So whether it's a condition or just a statement that they're 8,000 square, whatever, the 8,500 square foot roof, there's issues of drainage. So I'm okay with staff handling it. Which one should not be a condition? Should trash and recycling plan not be a condition? Or that's just something that'll be part of the process? Should, seems like the parking plan and the
Sure,
agreement. So which ones do we make as conditions?
Well, I think that the requirement that there be some sort of written agreement between Wild Bear and Caribou Room in terms of parking. I'm not sure where they are in that process, but I think that that is a valid condition, that there be an agreement between that property owner for additional use of parking spaces. That's one I can point out. If you want to, that there be bike racks for the property. That's one. But where you're just asking them to provide information, rather than say that it needs to meet a certain criteria or specification, that isn't really a condition.
Well, then certainly so the parking plan with the bus parking, the employee parking, and the agreement with Caribou Room should be a condition then. Agreed?
Yes, that could be, parking plan, if you want information about how parking is going to be obtained or where the parking is going to be located, you can have that as a requirement. But in terms of the special review agreement and a condition, just to have a plan, that's acceptable. But again, what are you asking them to meet? It's just to provide information, essentially.
And then Chair Cornell, this is Cynthia. I would say that according to the code, so when we look at section 16-52, there's a few things that you have mentioned that are relevant, and they note that in 1652 under a complete site plan. So off-street parking and loading areas, points of ingress and egress, service and refuse areas, signs and lighting, fencing, landscaping, screening. So some of those elements, they can add to the site plan. There were a number of documents to look in the Dropbox link. And even as I was looking through various documents, I was trying to find all this information. And architect Ryan Hughes had said it's on this specific site plan, looking at all this information because it was a lot of information to condense. But that is, those are elements that are being asked for on a site plan. So if there are concerns, as you noted, earlier through, you noted lighting plan, bike racks, trash and recycling. I think all that stuff is relevant to put on a site plan. As for the emergency egress opportunities, that was something that was brought up and a question that was asked by Commissioner Glasser, if there was a thought process on emergency egress. Is there another way in and out of this lot other than the singular entrance and loop? But is that something that's being asked for, and that may pend their conservation easement with Boulder County and any other, considerations with that if they're allowed to have another access. But some of those elements could be added to the site plan. I think that is completely relevant. We're talking about the lighting plan, bike racks, trash and recycling plan. The other stuff that's a little more nebulous is the drainage plan. And, I would note with respect to permaculture design, there's a lot of trees on the site that they were looking at, and certainly the best way to store water on a site is a tree. So some of their landscaping options would help look at that kind of drainage piece, but I'm just throwing that out. As for water and wastewater usage expectation, that would require their engineer provide that to us. I don't know if that's something viable that Ryan and his team could bring. The future expansion and or large gatherings for parking and bus parking considerations. So some of these elements, as they were brought up, Ryan had said they were discussed, but they didn't, they weren't necessarily solidified. So I'm not sure if Chair Cornell is saying, hey, can you prepare yourself for the Board of Trustees for these questions to be asked? It'll be noted in the minutes they were asked by the Planning Commission. More information that could be provided in case they have the questions and want to solidify that or have any specifications for the agreement. That they have offsite parking. Obviously, the Caribou Room would be very handy to have as a supplemental parking area because it's in code that it's within 300 feet of the property itself. So that certainly would be beneficial if they struck an agreement. But she also spoke of other locations for augmented parking.
Okay. Well, then, so we'll just leave it at, as you spoke, I think the three things, the bicycles and the lighting plan and the parking plan, which we discussed. Is that? We can put
Trash and recycling. So just those elements could be added to the site plan or fleshed out more on the site plan or, and or added to the narrative if your team could do that and show more of that information. Some of that stuff could be addressed in text in the narrative. Lighting plan that you're going to have downcast lighting and where it would be and all those considerations. There were multiple things that came up in the discussion of the lighting plan and how that would be dealt with at night as well.
Okay. Well, I think we should, thank you for, the clarification, and we're very close. So I think where we're at though is that this actually, obviously this meets the conditions of 1655 Article 3 with the discussion that we just had with Cynthia, that staff has the items that we would recommend for approval. So can I get a motion to approve the special SRU for Wild Bear at zero, it's peak to peak highway, I guess. Anybody like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion. This is Linda.
Who was that?
I have Commissioner Gasser for the motion, and I have Commissioner Reese for a second. Is that correct?
Yes.
I am going to go down the list here and do a roll call vote. We will start with Commissioner Blakemore.
Yes.
Yes. Chair Cornell.
Yes.
Commissioner Giblin.
Yes.
Commissioner Glasser.
Yes.
Commissioner Herring.
Yes.
Commissioner Perret.
Yes.
Commissioner Reese.
Yes.
And Vice Chair Williams.
Yes.
We have a resounding unanimous vote of approval for Wild Bear SRU to move forward toward the Board of Trustees, and Deputy Town Administrator, Town Clerk Miranda Fisher will give you guidance on when that would go to the Board of Trustees to set that date. Congratulations,
Thank you for the
Wild Bear.
thoughtful process. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Jill.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Donna.
Lots of great questions.
Thank you, Wild Bear team.
And thank you everyone from Wild Bear and for all the public in attendance tonight.
Appreciate the Planning Commission, Cynthia. Thank you, Miranda. Aaron.
All right, we need to take a little break and then we'll come back for the next step of the discussion items. We need to move through that, and we actually have staff reports too. So can we take a 10-minute break? That'd be like
For 9:15.
9:15.
Chairman Cornell, I just did want to say, this is Karen Garrity. Staff does have a suggestion when we get to the next item, how we could move through it rather quickly. And then as far as the staff report goes, it's in the packet, so, you know, folks can just read it. I just wanted to let you know that we don't have to take a lot longer, since it has already been a couple hours.
I understand. So does it, if no one needs to take a break, you want it, we could try to push forward.
Oh, I'm not saying that. I just want you to know we're not,
I think
staff has, staff's aware that you've already had a pretty long meeting, and we will treat the next items accordingly.
I was just getting warmed up. Okay,
That's
let's.
what we're afraid of. No,
5 minutes. Everybody take 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Cornell.
Are we, is everybody here? Are we at a point where we could reconvene?
Reconvene.
Okay, well, we'll just start. Good. Well, Karen, you said, Karen Garrity said that you had an idea about, maybe cutting the subdivision regulations down. So we'll take your input for staff edit.
I'm gonna go ahead and let Miranda Fisher start off that agenda item.
Let me share my screen. So in AIM, you all will see we highlighted basically 13 points that need kind of further discussion based on the comments that were received on the Google Doc. And thank you to those of you who had jumped on to do that. Our recommendation, though, is these are going to require much more of a discussion and a deeper dive into the code and looking at maybe other municipalities' codes. So we recommend that you do move forward with the committee like we discussed at the September meeting. I know originally we talked about a committee of 2, so we wouldn't have to publicly notice those meetings. Obviously, are not opposed to a committee of more than 2 commissioners, but just feel like these 13 topics should be assigned to a group to then come back with their recommendations on, rather than spending a bunch of time going round and round kind of talking about each of these. But before we get into that, I do want to pass it over to Attorney Madsen, because one of the reoccurring themes throughout the whole Google Doc was why would we be creating a new code versus just updating our current code? So I'd just like Jennifer to weigh in on why we're going that route.
Good evening, everybody.
There, Jennifer.
As Miranda noted, I did see a question raised on several of the comments as to why adopt a new code language as opposed to just amending the existing code to add some of the sections that we had discussed that we were missing. Those sections being the streamlining the process for minor subdivision and allow administrative approvals of lot lines. What I wanted to mention is certainly we can go about it 2 different ways. We can either repeal the existing code and replace it with brand new subdivision regulations, or if the desire is to make amendments to the existing code language, certainly we can do that. One thing I would like you to consider before making that decision is that there are more additions to these brand new subdivision regulations than what was previously mentioned. And I think what we had talked about when we first brought this to you were the concerns that we have that have come to our attention recently related to minor subdivisions, the lot line adjustments, those particular issues. But these subdivision regulations that you have reviewed, they include a lot more than just those 2 items. For example, there are detailed provisions related to enforcement of the subdivision regulations. We don't have those in our current code. There's a detailed discussion as to what goes into a subdivision agreement. That's important, I think, because then the applicant and the town are really on the same page as to what is the substance that goes into a subdivision agreement. There's also information in these draft subdivision regulations as to what's the language that's on the plat. That will provide consistency in your subdivision plats. There's a section on administrative interpretation of code language, also plat vacation, plat amendment, and lot line adjustments. So all of those things are included in these draft regulations, and those would be things that you would need to consider if you decided not to do a repeal and replace, but those would be items that you would need to consider whether you wanted to add those to existing code if you decided to go to the route of amending existing code to add the changes. I think just doing the repeal and replace, if you want to add all those things, is probably the easier way to go about it. So those are just my thoughts in terms of that global question of should we amend existing code, or should we adopt these whole-scale new subdivision regulations?
Okay, staff, is it Karen Garrity? Do you want to follow up on that, or is it over my turn?
Oh, you're welcome especially if you have any questions for Jennifer for what she just presented. And if you wanted to comment on the suggestion staff made to form that committee to do the work.
Well, I totally agree with this list. I believe, Steve and I worked together, quite a lot on that. And we actually didn't have an issue with, I felt that we felt that this draft, or that this new one yes, it is lengthy. I know Karen Blakemore was the one who spoke the most about why we were doing that. So maybe we should ask Karen. But could you, before we do that, Karen, I'll let Karen Blakemore, I'll let you speak. But then if we do a committee, I know that we talked about before that Karen and myself would actually work together. But if we expand it to 3 or 4, we actually could have that committee, but we just have to post that it's a meeting. How would that work?
Yes, it would be very similar, Chairman Cornell, to the way we handled that committee that was working on updating the code previously that Dallas led the charge on, where we went ahead and had meetings, but they were publicly noticed, and you'd have to make an arrangement. It would have to be done in such a way that the public could participate if they were interested. You don't have to have them participate in the conversation, but that if they wanted to, they could listen in to what you were doing. You would treat it like a work session.
Okay, I understand that. So yeah, Karen Blakemore, I mean, I think you had the issues, but then they're certainly recommending that we work on these points. So, and you wanted to be in a committee, which I feel would be very, very good. So how do you feel about what Jennifer, the attorney, said?
Well, so I looked at the Boulder Municipal Code for subdivisions, and it's quite a bit shorter than this one. And then I also looked at, and it just has the lot line changes and minor subdivisions, and not the other categories that we have in our draft version. And I looked at another small town in Colorado that also was more similar to our current code, with the addition of the lot line changes and minor subdivision. But then the lines code is very similar to our draft regulations. So I'm looking at section 17.6 administrative interpretations in the draft regulations, and it seems to me that this could apply to issues in addition to subdivision regulations. So it's almost like the draft is It seems to be more of a standalone document to me than part of our municipal code, because it has, and I wonder what Jennifer thinks about that, section 17.6, administrative interpretations. I don't see what is very specific to subdivision regulations in that section.
And I'm happy to address that. I think that there are definitely some common provisions in here. You know, especially at the beginning of there's that first section that's purpose, applicability, interpretations, administrative interpretations. Yes, those are common provisions that could be used in other parts of the code. I will say that the administrative interpretations, you know, as town staff is aware, many of the applications that come before the Planning Commission, many of the questions, they're not always a square issue that fits in the square hole, or I should say a round issue that fits in the round hole. You know, sometimes there needs to be some finessing of situations to figure out how are we going to process this, or, you know, how are we going to help this property owner and move forward with that application. So that's why this administrative interpretation provision is in here. We wouldn't necessarily need an administrative interpretation on other sections of the code, like, for example, whether weeds are too high, that type of thing. So this is pretty specific to the subdivision regulations.
So it seems like it would also apply to planned unit development.
Potentially, yes. And I think one thing that you pointed out, Commissioner Blakemore, is that I had seen in your comments, is that you have seen other municipalities that have land development codes.
Yes.
These types of provisions and what you see at the start of the subdivision regulations, yes, those could be at the start of a land development code, which would include subdivision regulations, include zoning, include planned use development, plan development uses. So it could be done that way. And what we would then be doing is we would be scrapping Chapter 16 and Chapter 17 and adopting a brand new land development code. That would be an option as well.
Mm.
And then, you know, some of the comments related to definitions. Aren't these definitions applicable for Chapter 16? Yes, they are applicable for Chapter 16 as well. So that would be a third way of going about this is adopting a land development code.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would be happy to work in the subcommittee on this and to start with the draft regulations and see how we can make those fit into our municipal code.
Okay, well, last month then we spoke and I felt that we were going towards that I would work with Karen Blakemore and we could work with a group. And Steve just had mentioned here while we're talking here, Steve and I actually worked together on this. So his comments are basically our comments. So I understand where we came together with all those comments that we put in there. And it seems like between the three of us, the vast majority of the comments were between Karen and Steve and Roger. So, and maybe just to make it work smoothly so we don't have to post and do this, if I would work with Karen and we'd work with staff to just kind of flush out, and that list is exactly the list I agree with there that you put in there, and we would work with, especially with Karen to shorten this or do whatever it wants, but Steve and I agree that it actually does the job. It may be a little long, and I definitely feel that the lot lined ones and the consolidation ones are very thorough and giving us the power within the planning commission just to make those changes. So there's a lot that really works in there. Is it long? Yes. The other one is that when it was on the computer, wherever there was the original draft, it was written down draft only or draft. That's how it got pushed off to the side because it was superseded by a previous document. So it's not quite, it reads a little better. But does the planning commission, is everybody kind of okay with Karen and myself working with staff to see if we can work through and certainly get Karen's questions answered, and maybe we can resolve this together, that there would actually be a workable draft that, the typos and all the corrections are made. And would that work for everybody?
This is Jim Reese. I vote yes.
We just go down the line then. Chris Pray, your thoughts? Is Chris there?
Subcommittee, and but then like us commissioners can just talk to either one of you and have questions and get questions answered and such. And then we meet when the committee has got all its findings.
Okay, I agree with that. Stephanie Herring, are you okay with that? Just the two of us working together?
Yeah, that works.
Billy Giblin, do you have any comments?
No, I mean, I started that, I made some comments when I went through it, but no, I agree. I think as long as I think you guys are the best to work on it together, and then when you bring it back to us, hopefully it'll be a lot smaller and easier to handle.
All right, Linda Glasser, any comment?
No, I agree that the two of you should work together on this. If we have questions or if you have questions from us on our ideas on this, we could work through that as well. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Steve Williams, Steve. Yeah. So Steve's nodding yes. Yeah. So Karen Garrity, does that work that the Karen Blakemore and myself would work with staff and to see if we can't flush out some of the issues that we have here and get this wrapped up then?
Sure, absolutely.
And then Chair Cornell, just for clarification purposes, this is Cynthia, and there were three options that were outlined by the attorney. So there is repeal and replace, which is looking at this existing code. And so I think that's the line you're going down, looking at proposed draft, and working with the other option was amending the existing code with elements that we want. And then the third option was creating a whole land use code and scrapping everything. So it sounds like we're going with option A. And then one of the, if you could confirm that, and then one of the outstanding questions that Attorney Madsen had brought up the last time we discussed this was whether or not design standards were wanting to be included, as they weren't included with this draft, but it wasn't a suggestion that they shouldn't be included. I would only say also Lock Buoy is a similar size. They were under the last census. They're about just under a mile high, but they deal more with fracking than mining subsidence and topography that we deal with. So those were some of the thoughts that I had with respect to subdivisions, is just kind of keeping that same mindset on steepness of land and other considerations.
Yes, I believe we're going with the first option, that we would try to work with this draft in working with Jennifer, and we certainly can. We can communicate, but I also feel like, please, the commissioners, if you see some things on there, we still should send emails in to staff, even if you don't go to that document and make the bullets. If you read anything, send an email and we can work on it. So let's just leave it at that then. I think we asked everybody, so we'll have a subcommittee and we'll work together with Karen Blakemore and myself and staff. And let's see if we can't get all the answers to some of the difficult questions and come back with a decent draft that we can really bring back for probably after the first of the year. Okay?
Yes, I just have one question for Commissioner Blakemore. Commissioner Blakemore, you had said Boulder, that Boulder's code was smaller. Were you talking Boulder City or Boulder County?
Boulder City. The
Okay.
city of Boulder. Mhm.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, well then we'll do that. We can send out some email, Karen, and we can email each other and work with staff to see when you're available. I'm pretty much available all the time, being retired, so I can certainly work with your schedule.
I have the same schedule.
You have the same schedule, available all the time. Okay. So Karen Garrity sounded like we would just take the staff reports. It's getting late and it's all online there and everybody look at it. So that's what we're going to do. Does anybody object to that? Okay. Is there any other business? Staff, is there other business?
The meetings, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're scheduled for November 18th for the one special meeting. Correct?
As it stands, right? now, yes. The next meeting would be November 18th.
Okay.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
And then, hey
Yeah,
now, let's make sure that we consider in this next month whether or not there should be a meeting in December and a date that we would potentially meet if we decided to meet, or if just one meeting on November 18th is enough. Not that I don't mind writing less minutes, but it is a long run between mid-November and January. And this year has lasted 25 years. So it's a long time. And I honestly miss seeing all of you in the same room.
Well, I sent that email and we proposed the December date. We have a date. I thought it was also contingent upon, what staff have for us.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Generally so. So I don't have any applications for November 18th yet outside of the rezoning lot line dissolution that is coming back, that's continued yet. And we're cruising up on the public noticing timeline requirements. So someone would have to be submitting like tomorrow in order to have another pending application. So it may be another opportunity to, continue discussion on subdivisions if the subcommittees met and discuss status and things like that, or if there are any other topics of conversation that anyone is wanting to discuss. It's probably a good time to do it.
Okay, so we have November 18th will be scheduled, and I think we should just work together for the one. I think it was going to be the week certainly in December. So we'll put that date on hold, but we obviously don't need to reserve a room. So the December meeting, I think, should just be put on hold, and we'll see.
What was the date on the December meeting?
December 16th.
Okay.
Was one that had been proposed. If we actually have a meeting, it'll be December 16th. But let's just put that a question mark, and we'll plan on November 18th. Okay?
Awesome.
Any other business staff?
Okay.
Chris, go ahead with our motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right. And seconded by?
Second.
Everybody seconding. Okay. So in favor?
Aye.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
It is adjourned at 9:41 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, bye. Thanks, Cynthia.
Bye.